Happy Monday, DawgNation. My name is Brandon Adams. Happy Labor Day to you, I guess, but no Labor Day holiday for us. Labor Day is truly a work day, and there's no other place I'd rather be than right here with you to talk about everything that happened in Nashville over the weekend. Georgia gets the 2019 season off to a start with a win against Vanderbilt by a 30-6 final. We'll talk about that. We'll bring John Stinchcomb on the program a little bit later on here as well. We'll get his thoughts on the game. We'll look at how DeAndre Swift, Jake Fromm may have fared in comparison to the Heisman campaigns that are being waged around college football right now. We will do all of that and more over the course of the next hour. Great to have you with us. If you're off of work today, I'm really glad to hear that. Sit back, relax. Let us entertain you for the next hours. We talk some Georgia football as DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, begins right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
You know, I think there are two really interesting stories that come out of Saturday for Georgia against Vanderbilt. One of those is how Georgia played. The other is how Georgia fans felt about the way that Georgia played. And maybe this is a legit criticism that kind of, goes along with what Georgia's trying to do this year. Maybe this is a fan base that's just sort of getting bored by beating SEC East teams by 2 or 3 touchdowns every time they go out there. Difficult to tell one or the other, but one way or another, a lot of Georgia fans were not thrilled with a 30-6 win for Georgia against Vanderbilt on Saturday. We saw this in the forum at forum.dawgnation.com. We saw this on our DawgNation postgame show, which you can go back and rewatch on DawgNation's Facebook page, DawgNation's YouTube page, the Twitter, pretty much all the DawgNation video channels. It may disappear on Twitter, but you get the point. All the DawgNation video channels, you can kind of see where the reaction is from what happened against Vanderbilt, and you probably noticed some of this yourself when it comes to social media here too. So let me try to do 2 things off the top of our program to begin our week. I'm going to deal with the reality of the fact that the Georgia offense came out very hot against Vanderbilt on Saturday, built up a big lead early, and did kind of sputter some after that. However, for the Georgia fan who's a little too frustrated by that or asking too many tough questions about why it wasn't different, why it was not total annihilation instead of just complete domination, I'm also going to tell you to take your cue from Kirby Smart here a little bit, who doesn't seem to be all that concerned so much about what went down here. Let me give you an example of this. Kirby Smart's kind of opening comment, not taking for granted the fact that Georgia went out there, built the lead that it did, and then coasted after that. To hear Kirby talk about this, the never satisfied Smart was actually kind of okay with the way things went down on Saturday. Here is Kirby in his own words.
We've still got a long way to go. We had a lot of undisciplined penalties and didn't play efficiently in the second half, at least offensively. But I'm proud of our guys. I don't take it lightly when you go on the road in a SEC opener and you open up with, a couple touchdowns, 2 or 3 touchdowns in a row. I think that's big. We had a lot of young guys on defense step up and play well.
So Kirby says, I don't take it lightly when we go out here in this stadium and do that. And I think if Kirby's not taking that lightly, if he's not taking that for granted, I think the best advice for Georgia fans would be to not take that for granted either. Be thankful that your team went out and got an easy win. Be thankful that your team displayed what it displayed against a spot, Nashville, Vanderbilt Stadium, that has not always been easy for SEC teams. And frankly, it hasn't always been quite as easy as it was supposed to be for Georgia teams either. So for the most part, Kirby Smart doesn't seem to be all that bothered by the fact that most of the second quarter, certainly all the second half, wasn't quite as efficient as the first quarter looked like when Demetrius Robertson was catching touchdowns and Georgia was spreading the ball around to seemingly everyone on the roster. Wasn't quite the same after that. Now, a lot of Georgia players had their chance to kind of weigh in and give their thoughts on what changed. Why was it the offense started looking a little less crisp, a little less efficient? Let me start with Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm here.
Yeah, it just wasn't as clean. That's kind of part of it when you play the first game. You not as clean as you want to be, but that's kind of the way it was there in the second half. Had some penalties, had turnover here, turnover there, but it is what it is. First game, we're thankful to come out with the win against a great opponent.
So P says some penalties come up here, and there were a few of those on Georgia. A couple turnovers, the Kearis Jackson situation on what would have been a deep throw and a connection that Fromm was able to make to him. That's an example of that. Remember, you have the holding penalty that takes away the deep throw to Robertson in the second quarter. Am I remembering that correctly? That's another big play you could have added to Georgia's ledger if not for that. So Fromm kind of cites some penalties here. He kind of cites the turnover that ultimately happened on the Jackson play. DeAndre Swift, though, had something else to say. He kind of wondered, hey, did the offense just kind of lose some of its luster, some of its enthusiasm, however you want to say it? DeAndre Swift was kind of talking about some of that when it comes to what went down in the second half here. Here is Swift on the somewhat stalled Georgia offense.
What would you say the difference was in the lack of efficiency in the second half that we saw in the first? What was the difference?
I can't really put our finger on it. I don't know if it's being too conservative. I'm not sure. We just need to get back to work and make sure that don't happen again.
So maybe a little conservative. Certainly some Georgia fans would probably agree with that, although I guess the Georgia coaches themselves would agree with Swift's last sentiment that the big issue is that whatever was right or wrong on Saturday, the real key is to get back to work this week during practice and be ready for the other games that are going to come later on in the season. Let me go to Demetrius Robertson here for a moment. He was a part of the energy of the first quarter, but what happened after that? D-Rob also offered his thoughts on that too.
I feel like we do a whole lot better. Just learning how to finish. When we get down there in the money zone, we gotta cash in and do our job, do the little things right. The penalties, the not focus on our assignment and things like that. But we won't get better. Go back to the drawing board.
I mean, ultimately, I think that D-Rob is really zeroing in on the issue to the extent that there is one for Georgia, that there were some scoring opportunities. On this show, we think of scoring opportunities not so much being the red zone. Robertson there calls it the money zone, which is kind of a cool phrase. For us around here, it's not so much 20-yard line and in as it is 40-yard line and in. Those are really the moments when you've got to turn would-be field goals into touchdowns and would-be stall drives into at least some points. You've got to be able to do that. And that's probably the one thing that Georgia on Saturday did not do enough of. Interesting to hear Robertson say that. And for what it's worth, Georgia running back Brian Harrigan, who much like Robertson found the end zone on Saturday, was also citing some of those red zone woes. Here is Brian Harrigan.
I mean, I saw it the same way. The offense just couldn't score when we got to the red area. I mean, we should do better than that. Our goal is to score 100% of the time, which we didn't complete tonight. So, I mean, we got to go to practice and get better.
So he says you got to go out there and do that. I had a chance to kind of follow up with Harrigan on that and say, okay, so for the Georgia offense, which, dominates in the running game and certainly has scored plenty of points over the last couple of years, what changes in terms of what you're seeing from the defense when you get down there close, when the field is smaller and theoretically maybe Georgia's a little easier to defend because you can bring more bodies up to the line of scrimmage? What is it that changes there in that moment, in those kinds of situations? And Harrigan weighed in on that too.
Well, when we get inside the 20, a lot of the defenses start to send blitzes and cats and corners and stuff like that and games on the line. So it's kind of harder to run the ball right there. And it's also kind of hard to throw the ball because they blitzing so much. But if you can get a good playoff, then it's a score.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously I think that makes a lot of sense. As we said before, when fields get smaller, it just gets a little easier to defend against UGA because of what it does. However, you can hear Harrigan say what he says. You can hear D-Rob say what he says. You can hear Fromm and all these guys talk about the issues of an offense that didn't look quite as crisp late in the game as it did at the very beginning of the game. Can't help but remind you here, though, that Kirby Smart doesn't necessarily feel that way. And I want to give you an example of this. Off the top of the program, we heard from Smart saying, listen, I'm not going to take this for granted. I'm not going to take it lightly that Georgia came in here, built a big lead, essentially ended any threat of an upset within the first couple of minutes in this game. Smart says, I'm not going to take that lightly. There was also a moment in the post-game press conference that kind of offered a similar feeling from Smart. I asked him about something that happened during the game. The fact that the Georgia offensive line on those short yardage situations, there were at least two examples of that, where Georgia tried to really power its way to a first down in a short yardage situation, wasn't able to get it done. The offensive line that some think could be the best in college football, in that moment at least, those couple moments, was kind of stymied. Was that a reason for concern from Kirby Smart? If he wants to be dissatisfied with a 30-6 win versus Vanderbilt, this was his chance to do it. And as you heard, if you watch this in the DawgNation video channels on Saturday evening, Smart didn't want to go there. Smart seemingly was kind of okay with most of what happened on Saturday. Here is another example of that.
325 yards rushing. I'm not going to get overly concerned about the two that we didn't get or the one we didn't get. Certainly a lot of room for improvement, but those guys play physical, and those guys see every front and every box known to man. I'm disappointed we didn't convert those, but That's good, guys. We got to have a lot of things to work on. That's just one of the many things that we continue to improve on. And everything will be exaggerated great, or everything will be exaggerated horrible, and that's just the way it is.
You're glad to see.
So when you hear, we cut that out of that. I cut that clip a little long. So when you hear Smart there, I think the tone that he's taking in response to the game ought to be the one that Georgia fans also take there as well. Smart says, listen, everything that we do is either going to be exaggerated for the great or exaggerated for the terrible. And that's probably true. We've all seen that play out ourselves a million times. We know that's the case. But my advice here is to you, not exaggerate this for the terrible. Georgia got an easy win on Saturday against Vanderbilt. We just showed you lots of examples of Georgia players acknowledging that the offense needs to be more crisp for the entirety of the game. But, y'all, nobody played perfect this past Saturday. Alabama threw the ball all over the yard against Duke, but I don't know if you noticed, statistically speaking, they didn't run the ball all that well. Oklahoma had a big night offensively last night against Houston, but my gosh, that Sooners defense, even after giving Alex Grinch a ton of money as defensive coordinator, they're not playing a whole lot better right now. Ohio State was probably also a little more crisp in the early going of the game than they were later on in the game. Nobody had a perfect Saturday. Everybody's got room for improvement. But Kirby Smart, the Georgia coach, certainly seems to think his team got its 2019 campaign off to a good start. And if he feels that way, I don't think there's any room for UGA fans to feel differently. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Hello to you, and thanks for being with us live on video today, 10 a.m., DawgNation Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, on the radio at noon, on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref. Actually, we're up into today for the Labor Day holiday there on 960 The Ref, but we're looking forward to being back there at noon tomorrow with our friends in Athens on 960 The Ref. And we're available as a podcast wherever you find them. For those of you enjoying a little time off yourself for this Labor Day holiday, hope that you are having a great time. And it's certainly a pleasure to be able to talk some Georgia football with you here today. We'll get John Stinchcomb later on. I want to talk about the debut of Zamir White here in a moment as well. Before we do that, can I take just a couple seconds and make what I think is a very exciting announcement? This is going to be one of the biggest events that we have done in quite some time, and one of the biggest events we'll do all season long. And I want to go ahead and make you aware of this now, because the last time we tried something like this, it booked up and sold out very, very fast. This time, I think, is going to be no different. In fact, I think the ticket demand for this is going to be higher and bigger and better than anything we've done before. So act quickly on what I'm about to tell you if you want to be a part of the fun thing of the upcoming season. Of course, everybody knows that Saturday, September 21st, is a big one for the Dogs, hosting Notre Dame in Athens on that Saturday, and we're going to give you a chance to enjoy that one in absolute luxury and style, in first-class accommodations. Let me tell you about DawgNation Express. Now, you can go to DawgNationExpress.com and find out more about this, but essentially, here's what's going to happen on DawgNation Express Day, which is Saturday, September 21st. We're going to have a big, fancy motor coach rolling out of here sometime in the early afternoon, heading to Athens for kind of an all-inclusive. It's an exclusive tailgate because it's going to be hard to get in there, but it's all-inclusive what you get in there with food and beverages and kind of everything that goes along with that. It is going to be a first-class event. We've got some great sponsors who are teaming up with us to help make all this possible. I'll be telling you about them coming up in the days and weeks ahead. But because of the generosity of our partners who've teamed up with us to make DawgNation Express possible, I'm here to let you know that your ticket for DawgNation Express, which includes motor coach accommodations to Athens, having a great time on the bus on the way down, catered beverage, inclusive tailgate while you're there, with the TVs and kind of all the really cool stuff that you've seen us do at DawgNation tailgates in the past. We're going to have the whole 9 yards kind of set up and going with all of this. That's all going to be there that day. Because of the generosity of our sponsors, we're able to offer you a ticket to this incredible event, which includes food and beverages and the whole nine. We're able to offer you a ticket for this for just $99 plus fees. So the website for you to go to today is DawgNationExpress.com. This is one of the biggest games in Athens in a long time, and everybody wants to do it big that day. And if you want to do it as big as it can possibly be done, the website for you to go to is DawgNationExpress.com to find out about how DawgNation is going to be rolling into the Classic City there that day. I'm going to be a part of this. I want you to be a part of it as well. Tickets just $99 plus fees for an amazing tailgate experience that starts the moment you leave Atlanta and rolls all the way throughout the day to an unbelievable, fully stocked tailgate set up just for you. Check out DawgNationExpress.com for a whole lot more on this. All right, before I bring on John Stinchcomb, we talk to him about his thoughts in the game. Let me also go around the doghouse here for a moment. It's brought to you today by Pella Window and Door. And I thought one of the really cool moments of Saturday was when we finally got a chance to see the debut of Zamir White and those huge Zeus cheers that were just thundering in Nashville. And by the way, Georgia fans, an amazing job in Music City all weekend long. The game day environment and atmosphere was even better in that regard. And, we got to see limited window here. He wasn't, obviously on the field the entire game, had to wait for a while for it to happen. We saw a couple moments from Zamir White that I thought were really pretty cool. And I thought that Jake Fromm, the Georgia quarterback, I thought his evaluation of White after the game was also pretty interesting as well. There was one tiny miscue for White. Other than that, a little bit of foreshadowing of what he might do a whole lot more this season. Here is Fromm on that.
Well, I'd rather him not fumble, but, man, he played great. Played strong, played tough, but you don't expect anything less from that guy. As big and physical he is, that's the kind of guy he is. Great guy, great player, and he played great tonight.
Yeah, listen, I think that while we didn't see as much of White as you maybe would have thought you might have seen, and certainly some Georgia fans hope to have seen, what you did see from him in a game does not do anything to change those whispers that we've been hearing about him going back to some of the scrimmages in August or some of the work that he's done since his injury recovery in practice. I think this is a guy that is very clearly going to be one of the top players for Georgia all season long, and it was great to see him have a chance to be on the field on Saturday. It's Around the Doghouse. It's brought to you today by our friends at Pella Window and Door. Pella Window and Door of Georgia can help equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors. It's family-owned and operated, which is a really good thing. But you also have that branch right here in Georgia, which means you get local service backed by the power of a national company. And that's a combination you just can't beat. You can also get 50% off qualifying installations right now or 0% APR for 48 months. That's valid through November 14th. So you want to take advantage of that deal as quickly as you can. Pella offers the best lifetime warranty, top-of-the-line equipment, and unparalleled expertise. You can schedule your free in-home consultation today. And Pella's award-winning team will take care of everything for you, the measurements and all the other stuff that goes along with that. There's a couple different ways to get in touch with them. Let me give it to you here. First of all, the the web address, pellasoutheast.us. That's pellasoutheast.us. Or you can give them a call in their Dunwoody showroom. It's 404-445-2979. 404-445-2979. Pella Southeast, Pella Window and Door of Georgia is viewed to be the best, and it's great to have them as a part of Around the Doghouse here on DawgNation Daily. It's also great to have you with us as well. We're going to get John Stinchcomb on the phone and get up and rolling with him. We got John ready to go right now. Okay, that's awesome. We'll do that. We'll talk more about Swift, Fromm, and the rest of the dogs later on, but let's get John's thoughts right now as we welcome him in and certainly once again say glad to have you with us here today on DawgNation Daily.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Boy, it's great to have the former UGA All-American, a guy who's got great insight on the Dogs, talking about what happened on Saturday for Georgia against Vanderbilt. John Stinchcomb, welcome back to DawgNation Daily. Appreciate you being with us. Hope you're having a great Labor Day weekend. Thanks for sharing some of it with us. And I guess if you don't mind, let me start on the divide that I saw this past weekend from certainly Georgia gets an easy win over Vanderbilt, but it wasn't quite as thorough and complete as some fans want it to be. John, is this an example of fans having just maybe too high of a level of expectation now, or did you also see some problematic areas when it comes to this game?
Well, it looked like game one to me. I mean, there are areas to improve. You better believe it. But it's a solid win in the SEC, and looking across the SEC East, that's something that you should be really thankful for because, man, there are a lot of fans across the East that are pretty upset this morning about their team's performance. So, for the Dogs, I thought it was a solid win. I thought it's a good way to open the season, especially that first half. And I also think there's a great room for improvement, which is a good thing.
Yeah, so along those lines, I mean, one of the things that I hear a lot of folks talking about is, and admittedly, I am not an X's and O's expert enough to know this, and sometimes I think statements like this can veer in the direction of being wishful thinking, but some UGA fans wonder, when you come out there and you are just blowing the doors off the joint in the beginning, and then that kind of stops happening, is that Georgia taking the phrase that gets used is foot off the gas? Is this Georgia deciding that it doesn't want to show more to upcoming opponents, maybe Notre Dame included? When you're watching a game like this, do you detect any kind of philosophical play calling change that once Georgia had a lead, it didn't feel like it needed to do much more after that? Was this Georgia not executing the plays that it was calling, or was this Georgia changing the kinds of plays that it was calling because it had decided that it had done enough on this particular day?
Well, you tell me, B.A. The first series, it was run, followed by a couple more runs, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a 10-yard gash here. That's how they started the game, is something that most fans might consider vanilla, just handing the ball off. It wasn't exotic pass routes. There wasn't anything fireworks worthy. It was just incredible execution behind an offensive line that was overpowering Vandy early on. So the implication of a play caller taking his foot off the gas, I think, is not applicable in this game. You look at Kieras Jackson makes a wide-open catch and ends up fumbling inside the 10-yard line. Otherwise, that's a touchdown. So I think Georgia just can clean up a number of areas. And they came out smoking hot and were kind of enforcing their will onto Vandy early in that game, and they just weren't as clean in the second half.
Along those lines, one of the things I had a chance to ask Smart about after the game, we played the audio of this a moment ago, and for a second I thought he was about to give me one of his classic rants on this, but he stopped just short of doing that, is that Georgia's offensive line, the vaunted line, did get stymied a couple times in short yardage situations. That's at least eye-opening if it's not all that big of a factor in the ultimate final score in this game. And I asked him, is that the kind of thing that's going to disappoint him given the offensive line's reputation? He chose to cite all the rushing success that Georgia did have. When you see a couple short yardage situations where the UGA offensive line maybe doesn't quite get it done, as a former lineman yourself, what do you make of that?
Well, I think it makes a good point of normal down and distance rushing. I thought our offensive line was dominant, just across the board. They were taking D linemen and throwing open holes and getting to the second level, especially by the interior guys. Short yardage, can they do better? You better believe it. But the area I think that has the most room for improvement for the offensive line is in pass protection. I mean, Georgia's going to be a play-action pass offense, and I think when you saw situations where it was clearly passing downs, either by down and distance or the 2-minute drill, that no longer plays to the strength of that offensive line. So you saw a lot of line movement, a lot of gains from the defensive line and pressure packages coming from Vandy, and they weren't picked up very clean. So I fully expect that's an area of emphasis going forward for that offensive line scenario that they can clean up and improve. And I think that is probably a little bit more concerning when you're going to face teams that you're not going to be able to lean on and gain 10 yards a carry in your normal down and distance. You're going to be in some situations where everyone in the stadium knows you're going to pass it, and you have to be able to execute. So I'm pretty sure Coach Pittman is going to work a drill or two with some TE twists and various line games that can definitely be cleaned up by the front.
I think that's a really strong piece of evaluation there, John. I'm glad that you said that. And I didn't intend to ask you about this, but since we're on the subject of offensive line, let me just stay on this topic for a brief moment here and say I thought it was very interesting how it worked out at right guard. Cade Mays did indeed get the start. I had predicted that Cleveland would ultimately get that start. They gave it to Mays, but Cleveland played a good bit on Saturday. It seems like they are truly going to rotate these guys during games, much the same way they seemingly have been doing during practice as well. And I guess I kind of understand this. Mays is too good to keep off the field. I believe that Cleveland is probably too good to keep off the field. So you got to find a way for both guys to be able to contribute. You want to keep them happy, and you want to keep guys who deserve to play ought to play, I guess, is the overall, takeaway on that. What did you think of the way that Mays and Cleveland were managed on Saturday, trying to find some minutes for both of these very capable linemen at the moment?
I think it's healthy. I think back to my senior year, we had Kareem Marshall, George Foster as two very talented tackles, and George Foster ends up going as a first-round draft pick to the Denver Broncos in the NFL draft, and probably didn't start every game because he's in rotation with Kareem Marshall. So it's not an indication of lack of talent. I think it's an indication that you have 6 offensive linemen that are start ready in the SEC, and it's not uncommon. I mean, I think what's unique is that you see it on the offensive line. How many guys did they platoon at wide receiver or outside linebacker or defensive tackle?
Yeah.
I mean, they were all rolling in and out. So I think what's a little bit more noteworthy is that you actually have 6 guys that the coaching staff deems reliable. It's not a situation where you have 2 guys that, we can't really trust them on a regular basis, so we're going to split the difference. It's quite the opposite. You got 6 guys that they feel like they can count on and keep them fresh and rotate in.
Yeah, on the defensive side of the ball for a moment, I thought the story was very similar to what we just said with the offense, where you can fixate on the good and talk about what that group did well. Keeping Vanderbilt without a touchdown, I actually think is a pretty good job, especially late in the game when Georgia had a ton of reserves, and in some cases, third-string reserves. And, of course, John, you and I both know that Georgia's third string is a little different than most of the SEC's third string is going to be. But that last drive, keeping Vanderbilt out of the end zone, a lot of the work that was done there was with guys that you probably don't see on the 2-deep necessarily right now, but they go out there and get that done. So you'll feel good about that. And yet at the same time, I don't like the fact that Keyshawn Vaughn averages about, 5 yards a carry. The so-called havoc plays, unless there's a ton of PBUs that maybe I didn't see in terms of tackles for loss and sacks, you didn't have necessarily a million of those. So much the same way you did enough to dominate, but maybe not quite enough to feel like you played a perfect game on offense. I guess defensively, for me, it's a little bit the same way. Plenty of good, maybe some stuff that you still want to see more of. What did you make of the other side of the ball?
I was probably more encouraged by the defensive play than the offense. I think, golly, it's kind of odd to say that, but the expectations are so high with such an experienced quarterback in Jake Fromm and his ability to be so accurate with the football, and a stable of running backs that is unrivaled across college football. I mean, we're 4 deep of guys that are exceptionally talented. I'm guessing Zeus is your number 4 who comes in. So the expectations on offense are incredibly high. I think there's some unknown with the defense, and I think for a game 1, they played exceptionally well. The secondary looked very solid, and especially with the guys that were starting out. And, there was, like you say, there's a number of personnel platooning in throughout that game that I didn't see an incredible drop-off. Was there the havoc plays? No, but I didn't think there was as many opportunities. I like seeing Azeez Ojulari coming off the edge and getting a sack in combination with the rest of the linebackers. I mean, Tyndall and Quay and let's talk about the starters.
Yeah.
And Crowder and Monty Rice. Those guys were solid, man. They looked good.
Yeah, no, they really did. We're going to give a couple more questions with John Stinchcomb here coming up in just a moment. Before that, let me remind you folks that, of course, this is Labor Day weekend. Many of you having pool parties and cookouts and back porch activities, things like that this weekend. Of course, if you're doing that, the place to go for all of your needs is right there at Kroger. Kroger app, Kroger.com. Great place to download some coupons to do some big-time saving for the big-time party you may be having here for Labor Day. Hope you'll check that out with our friends at Kroger. John, you mentioned this a moment ago, and I wanted to get more of your thoughts on this. Really bad day for 3 SEC East teams, all of which Georgia plays. Most embarrassing here, of course, is Tennessee losing to Georgia State. But South Carolina's loss against North Carolina was not much better. And Missouri at Wyoming getting beaten that game is pretty ugly as well for a team that got some top 25 votes in the AP poll to begin the season. What did you make, I guess most significantly here Tennessee, but the others as well, what did you make of these SEC East teams looking so bad on Saturday?
Well, I think it's a scary proposition for all those that claim the SEC is best top to bottom. I think the conference as a whole still presents arguably 3, if not 4, of the best teams in the country, but the separation between the haves and the have-nots seems to be widening. We talked about it over the summer, BA, and when we were doing the On the East segment of who's threatening you out of the SEC East. And after week 1, you got to like your chances if you're a Dog fan.
Yeah.
And not only because you've got a good team, but it seems like there's so many other programs that are trying to gain traction, and if anything, they're losing ground. I mean, the separation. How would you feel as a Georgia fan if you came close in a game against Georgia State? And that's not a knock on Georgia State. It should be an indication of where you're at as an SEC program. I couldn't be more proud for the guys at Georgia State who, competed their tails off and come off with a huge win. But Tennessee and Jeremy Pruitt, who's, trying to spark some SEC rivalry that has otherwise been stagnant for a few years, has got to be scratching his head. I don't know how many hours of sleep he's got, but it can't be many since that game. I mean, it's going to be hard just to get the recruits in the door having a loss like that. So this season, strength of schedule is not going to be great for the Dogs if week 1 is any indication. But you still have some big games in Texas A&M, Auburn, Notre Dame, but the SEC East looks exceptionally weak. I get it; it's only week 1, but man, there's some ugly games across the board that really shows the separation that should exist between Georgia and the rest of the herd.
Couple quick things before we let you go. We'll try to make these kind of fast. This Saturday, Georgia's going to honor Vince Dooley. Dooley Field at Sanford Stadium. That name will be christened for the home opener against Murray State. John, you're not only a former Georgia player, you're still a pretty significant stakeholder in this university, certainly the athletic program. From your perspective, what does Dooley mean to UGA, and what does he mean to you personally?
Well, I think he's a cornerstone of our entire university. I think he's arguably one of the most recognizable figures to ever come through the University of Georgia, and was instrumental in setting the program up for the success and expectations that exist for the university. And I think it's long overdue that he gets this sort of recognition. I couldn't be more proud to be a part of the athletic board during a time like this, not only for the success that's being held by the current team, but the recognition of those on whose shoulders we stand to get here, and none more prominent than Coach Dooley.
I think that's very well said. Let me do one tiny thing before I say goodbye to you today, John. What was your thoughts on seeing, I think you touched on this at the very beginning of our conversation, those huge numbers of Georgia fans that traveled to Nashville on Saturday?
Oh.
How well did that translate on TV, and how cool was that for you to be able to see?
Oh, man. It was a away home game for Georgia. Seeing that much red, I got a couple buddies who played at Vandy, including Jim May. We went to high school together in Parkview, and it's embarrassing for their alumni to see their home stadium taken over by an in-conference opponent. And honestly, BA, I would be surprised if the SEC doesn't look at the ticket pricing from the box office practices of some of these teams, because it really doesn't seem fair to me that Georgia fans are price gouged for this Vandy game, because Vanderbilt is trying to seize on an opportunity to almost prey on visiting teams that travel well. If anything, it should be almost a standardized pricing system, and at least relatively. It doesn't have to be across the board, but man, it looked great for Georgia to show up in force in the numbers that they had. It was really impressive to see from the TVs.
Well, John, it's an incredible opportunity to have a chance to talk to you here today after the win for Georgia on Saturday against Vanderbilt. It's a big week coming up for the Dogs as well. We'll look forward to getting a chance to chat with you soon, including the Marlo's matchup this Thursday as we look ahead to the Dogs and the Racers of Murray State. So I expect you to come in on Thursday with just reams and reams of data on what Murray State's bringing to the table, all right?
I've already started my research. Make no mistake.
John, we'll talk to you later.
They're the Racers. I just found that out. Yeah.
We'll talk to you later on, John.
All right, BA. Thanks, brother.
Good stuff.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
On a much more serious note, if you haven't checked out the Marlo's matchup presented by our friends at Marlo's Tavern, John and I had a great time last week looking ahead to Vanderbilt. A lot of the stuff that John laid out on the line ended up coming true for the Dogs on Saturday, and I'm guessing it's going to be the same thing here this weekend as well. Listen, there is just an extra level of credibility that comes from a guy that's done it at a high level. John, a former All-American, a guy that earned a paycheck for a long time as a member of the New Orleans Saints. He brings something to the table when he talks Georgia football, and it's good to be able to talk to John about it here on DawgNation Daily and on the Marlo's matchup coming up a little bit later on this week. All right, let me also talk about my friends at MyBookie just for a moment. You know, a lot of you getting ready for the start of the NFL season. You want to be a part of the first online handicapping super contest that comes from my friends at MyBookie. It's just $100 to enter, and first prize is going to be guaranteed of at least $100,000. You just got to pick 5 NFL games against the spread each week, and then as you kind of climb your way up the leaderboard, you look to take home a share of those prizes. Cash and prizes. That's going to be a really good stuff. Also, big bonus this year when you sign up with MyBookie for the first time. Find them online by just typing in MYBOOKIE into your browser. You can get there, and when you get there, use the promo code DawgNation. It's all one word, DawgNation, spelled the way it's supposed to be, DAWG. When you get there and you do all that, how about this? You can get up to $1,000 first deposit bonus, and you can double your first deposit when it comes to my friends at MyBookie. But you've got to use the promo code DawgNation. Find them online, MYBOOKIE. Use the promo code DawgNation. You can have a great time. It's very, very simple. You bet, you win, you get paid. At MyBookie, it is that easy. Some folks who did not fare quite so well this past week, though, were our friends in the SEC East. Let me start with Tennessee. And here's what I'm very confident in. 2 very different opinions on the Vols. If you think they're going to play terrible every single Saturday just because they lost to Georgia State, I think you're going to end up being disappointed. In fact, look ahead to this Saturday against BYU. I think we see a different Tennessee team. However, playing better for much of the rest of the season, and I think that Tennessee probably will, is not going to do a whole lot to ultimately change Jeremy Pruitt's fate as the coach of Tennessee. I don't know how much longer he coaches for Tennessee, but I do believe that his career as Vols coach effectively ended on Saturday. He is essentially a lame duck for 1 more year, 2 more years, 5 more years, however. He got taken out at the knees by Georgia State. There are a few reasons for this. There is a media around Knoxville that wants to take him down a peg. He's one of these coaches that has a little bit of an abrasive relationship with the media. A lot of the coaches do that, win big, so the media has no opportunity at retribution. At Tennessee, now they get their chance to get even with him. You've already seen some sniping from some of the local beat reporters about Pruitt in the wake of losing to Georgia State. I believe you'll say more. He will not have the local media as an ally for him because, let's face it, he hasn't been quite so cozy with them. The other thing facing Pruitt here is he's got a careerist as an athletic director, someone who's always looking for his next job or his next opportunity. It would not surprise me at all if Philip Fulmer wants to be Tennessee coach again, especially when you see Mack Brown winning at North Carolina, Les Miles winning at Kansas. Philip Fulmer probably says, why couldn't it be me again? So when Jeremy Pruitt, on the heels of losing to Georgia State, he's going to look around. Media, athletic director, big-time boosters. I don't think he's going to find for himself very many allies with this program, and winning recruiting battles for guys like a Rick Gilbert and others, I think gets much harder when you say, sorry, we couldn't beat Georgia State, but when you're here, we're going to win big. That's a sales pitch that just doesn't work very well. So the idea of Jeremy Pruitt being the next Kirby Smart or maybe one day being the next Nick Saban, I think the chance of that happening effectively ended this past Saturday. He may coach at Tennessee for a while. They'll probably beat a couple of teams still this year, but he'll never have the full support of that program because the loss on Saturday deems him untrustworthy in the eyes of the people around that program who probably matter most. I, by the way, don't think the South Carolina loss to North Carolina was all that much better. I think that North Carolina is a bit of a laughingstock for even having hired Mack Brown, and he goes out there and wins that game on Saturday. Muschamp, questionable coaching decisions, at least one big one, punting at midfield. The odds favor going for it there. He tried to set up North Carolina on the long field, but his defense right now can't tackle. So the chances of Carolina scoring, North Carolina, were probably much better than maybe he realized, and the Tar Heels go on to win that game on that kind of late scoring drive. If you're North Carolina, though, I'm not quite sure I get my Carolinas confused. If you're South Carolina, though, I'm not quite sure what you're supposed to do about this, because on the one hand, Muschamp is not winning enough games on the field. He's not. But if you replace him with somebody else, and he is on the hot seat now. I don't. At least he starts the season on the hot seat. He has a chance to change that. But if you replace him with somebody else, what other coach is going to recruit a Zach Pickens? What other coach is going to recruit a Ryan Helinski? What other coach is going to steal a Jamias Williams out of the state of Georgia? Now, some of these players have played better than others, and some of these players may end up going on to be better overall prospects than others. But Muschamp is doing some things that a lot of South Carolina coaches from a recruiting standpoint might not be able to do. So it's a weird conundrum for the Gamecock. You've got a coach who's recruiting but not winning. And yet, if you bring in a coach that's likely to recruit worse than him, what are the chances of you actually winning more with that? So that's an issue. Missouri, just an embarrassment. You shouldn't even be in Laramie, Wyoming. No one's ever voluntarily chosen to go to Laramie, Wyoming. They've only ended up there by accident. Missouri apparently bucks that trend, going there of its own accord, and it got what it deserved. It lost as nearly a 3-touchdown favorite. Two other really quick SEC through stories to get to, and then we're going to move on and get back to Georgia for a moment. Auburn's win, I thought, was a pretty big one. A little ugly in the early going, but coming from behind to win the way they did. Bo Nix getting a chance to throw the touchdown is a nice moment for him. He'll probably be able to build off that. I do think Auburn's a dangerous opponent for Georgia and everybody else. I don't think this team wins 10 or 11 games, but they're good enough to beat somebody, and they're going to be a real threat to Georgia when Georgia goes to Jordan-Hare in November. I don't want to hear another word, though, about the Pac-12 in these games against ranked SEC teams. I don't think they've beaten a ranked SEC team since, 20 years or something crazy like that. They've over their last 12. The Pac-12 is against ranked SEC opponents. It's just not going to happen. And people say, well, they should have won this game. Folks, do you know how many of these SEC versus teams west of the Mississippi have played out much the same way as this, where over the course of a long haul, the Pac-12 team or the team west of the Mississippi just sort of runs out of gas against the bigger, stronger, more physical SEC team? This is a blueprint that has been in place now, and Auburn was the latest to take advantage of it. I don't want to hear about the Pac-12 in these spots. One more quick point to get to. I think one of the interesting stat lines on Saturday is one that may have gone unnoticed. Alabama played at least well enough against Duke on Saturday to get 5 passing attempts from Mac Jones. He was 4 of 5 in the game, only for 31 yards, so no big numbers or anything like that, but they did get him in the game. No one has depth at their backup quarterback right now. No one of the national elite, with maybe the exception of Oklahoma because it has Spencer Rattler, but other than that, no one has a quarterback that they really trust over the long haul as a backup. College football's changed in that regard. I do think it'll be a race to see who can get the most experience for their backup early on in the season. And at least for week 1, that race is won by Alabama, who does get 5 attempts for Mac Jones. So keep your eye on that, and we'll make that your SEC through. And here on DawgNation Daily, one of the things we're going to do each Monday on our program is talk about how Jake Fromm, DeAndre Swift, the 2 Georgia players right now that seem to be most in the thick of the Heisman race, how they compare to the rest of the Heisman hierarchy. And it's brought to you by our friends at Kroger. And I guess as you look at the Heisman hierarchy for this week, I think it's safe to say that your Heisman ballot today features these names. Jalen Hurts making his debut for Oklahoma. Big night last night against Houston, especially running the football, doing the kinds of things that a Sooner quarterback hasn't done since Jamel Holloway was toting the rock for the Sooners back in the Barry Switzer era. That was Hurts last night. You put him on this list as of right now. Justin Fields at Ohio State, accounting for 5 touchdowns. You put him on this list for right now, too. Going back to Thursday, Travis Etienne from Clemson. I think you probably put him on this list for going over 200 yards rushing. He's actually probably ahead of Trevor Lawrence on the Heisman hierarchy presented by Kroger right now. How about the 2 Georgia guys, though? Not a great night statistically for Jake Fromm, at least compared to what we've come to expect from him. He probably rates below these guys. after 1 week in the Heisman hierarchy presented by Kroger. And after the game, he talked a bit about his performance and how he would evaluate himself.
It's tough to tell. We'll go back and watch the film and really kind of look at the decision-making and make sure I was making the right checks and making the throws I needed to make. I didn't want to force any throws, but if there's throws I needed to make out there, I needed to make.
On the other hand, for Georgia running back DeAndre Swift, while he did not find the end zone, he was well over 100 yards rushing and one of the key leaders for the Bulldogs offense on Saturday. After the game, like so many other Georgia players who we've shared with you on today's show, a little disappointed with how the Dogs finished, but overall pretty happy to have contributed to a road win in the SEC against the Commodores. Here's DeAndre Swift.
We came out great, just like how we wanted to come out, but not too proud of how we finished in the second half. I mean, we left a lot of points out there, but defense held us strong. So we got a lot of work to do on offense, but we can't forget what it felt like to win, so I'm happy.
So overall, if you're looking at your Heisman hierarchy presented by Kroger, it's probably DeAndre Swift ahead of Jake Fromm after 1 week. And Swift will now be in competition with Hurts and Fields and Tua Tagovailoa probably in there as well as this and Travis Etienne from Clemson as this Heisman race will continue all season long. Speaking of the Heisman hierarchy presented by Kroger, let me tell you about a great deal and a great offer from them right now. Now in select Kroger stores, you can get 1 hour delivery. Just go to Kroger.com or the Kroger app, and you can place your order today. Kroger is obviously going to try to help you this time of year. My son starts fall baseball tomorrow. So many of you have these kind of fall events going on in addition to school being going on. You don't have enough time. Well, Kroger wants to give some of that time back to you. So go to Kroger.com or the Kroger app to find out how you can start saving some time by maybe getting your items from Kroger delivered right to your door in 1 hour or less. Really good stuff from our friends there at Kroger. All right, so a very busy show for us here on this Monday, and obviously it'll be like that for the next 6 months, we hope, all the way through what we think could be a national championship run for the Georgia Bulldogs. It also continues today. No Labor Day holiday for DawgNation. Kirby Smart press conference as I'm speaking this live. We're about, hour, 15 minutes away from the Kirby Smart press conference beginning. Georgia player interviews also coming up today. So stay close to DawgNation.com or the DawgNation video channels, and you can keep up to date on all of that. And, of course, Gator Hater Updater. Around here, we believe that a good Georgia fan is a Gator hater, as happy as we are about seeing Tennessee lose, and that's not unentertaining to say the least. Eyes towards what's going to happen in November later on, and a reminder, even on Labor Day, we keep this going. Now been 1,038 days since the lousy, stinking Gators have beaten the Georgia Bulldogs. Y'all enjoy the day off if you're getting one, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for DawgNation Daily. Have a great day, everybody. And on video. Time now for our R.S. Andrews cool down. Air, heating, plumbing, electric. R.S. Andrews does all those things for us, can do all of that for you as well. This is just a really good company that shows up, does the work that's promised for the price that's promised. A lot of these kinds of companies may give you unfortunate surprises, the kinds of surprises that you don't really want. That's not the case at R.S. Andrews. They are going to do good stuff for you at the price that's promised. So check them out online at rsandrews.com. I believe you'll be glad you did. All right, so to reset where we were to start the day today, acknowledging when it comes to the offense that even the Georgia players were very open about their disappointment at not executing as well for the full 60 minutes as they were at the beginning of the game. But it's Kirby Smart's opinion here that probably matters more than anything else, and Kirby just was not seemingly that worried about it. And Kirby, who has a very high level of expectation for his own performance and his team's performance, if he's not sweating it, my thought is maybe Georgia fans shouldn't be sweating it either. But you can tell us what you think now as a part of the R.S. Andrews cool down. Light Dog 68 says, BA, this is on YouTube, by the way. What did you think of the game? I thought it was pretty good, not great. I thought that overall Georgia needed to did what it needed to do. I thought Georgia did its job. If I'm giving you a grade on this, and I know we've got a report card up at DawgNation.com right now, if I'm giving you an overall grade for the game, I think it's a solid B. I don't know that it's a B+. It's certainly not an A, but it's probably not a B- for me either. Defense, keeping Vanderbilt without a touchdown is a nice job. Offense, eliminating any thought of an upset within the first few minutes is kind of a nice job as well. However, it takes something close to a Don Larson perfect game to win a national championship right now, and this wasn't perfect from Georgia, so there is plenty to work on there. Frank Patterson says, after not playing for 2 years, coming off 2 ACL surgeries, Zeus averaging 10.2 yards per carry, let that sink in for a minute. Yeah, listen, I know that Zeus doesn't play until the second half of this game. But I'm going to tell you right now, he is not a mop-up duty running back for Georgia this year. He's just not. This is one of the most important offensive weapons this team has. Now, why he, played when he did as opposed to getting in the game early, Georgia's got a pretty nice pecking order of running backs right now. In fact, they involved the totality of that group a little better than I probably thought they would. But the idea that Zeus is going to be your second half change of pace back or something like that, I think as the season progresses, he's a much bigger part of the offense than that. And those stats that someone just mentioned are a perfect example of that. Memphis Dog says covered the spread, but looked too conservative in the second half. That may have been the plan. Here's the thing to remember about these Vegas point spreads, though. Georgia was about a 21-point favorite, maybe 22, depending on how late you got it. And they do go out there and cover that number. Here's the thing to remember. These are not arbitrary numbers that Vegas just sort of pulls out of the sky. A lot of people say, well, all they want to do is set the line so they get equal action on both sides. I can tell you, as somebody who watches this stuff pretty closely, that is one of the biggest misnomers in all of gambling. First of all, there's almost never 50% money on both sides of a game. Almost never happens. It's almost impossible for it to happen. The public tends to favor one side over the other in virtually every single game. And for the most part, the sports books are okay with that. These numbers are based on the getting sharper by the year analytics that are out there. So the best minds in football all came to pretty much the same agreement that Georgia was about 3 touchdowns better on the road against Vanderbilt. Georgia exceeded that expectation. From that standpoint, the room to be dissatisfied is, I don't think you have a lot of space to stand on when it comes to that. Now, is the Georgia passing game up to par with some of the best teams in the country right now? It's not. It's not. And if that's the most important thing for you, and I can understand why it would be very important, but if that's the most important thing for you, then you're probably disappointed. But the teams that threw the ball better than Georgia on Saturday, they had their own issues to deal with. So there you go. Joel Torres says Fromm needs to take better advantage of Pickens' height. This is on Facebook. Joel, I think that's an interesting comment. And what I'll tell you about that is that I took it as a really good sign that Pickens was used as much as he was. The fact that he was this involved in his first game at Georgia leads you to believe that Pickens is also going to be a major part of the Georgia offense this season. So you let those two guys get their timing down, their rhythm down together in this offense this year, I think that Pickens is going to eventually have a good year. And if you get this game on your DVR, go back and find the pass interference play that Pickens drew down near that red zone. When Robertson's in the slot and Pickens runs the rub route in front of him and Robertson goes towards the corner, y'all, I'm going to tell you right now, that is unguardable. That is a crispy route. Unguardable. Because, when you're putting the big guy in front of the defense has to respect Robertson's speed going to the corner, and the fact that these two guys execute that perfectly, there was no pick play to that whatsoever. That was just a perfect rub. It was well executed, not like some of these spread teams that essentially cheat every single time they run their own, pick routes. That was perfectly executed, and I'm telling you right now, that is not going to be guardable this season. A pass interference penalty might be your only recourse against a move like that. So I know that Pickens didn't get his catches. They threw to him a couple times on those, down there near the goal line again later on in the game. Just didn't quite come up with that. Probably kind of a low percentage throw maybe. But that's still a player that Georgia is going to take big-time advantage of this season. They just are. They are. So, yeah, I thought that was fun. By the way, you can also see in the comment section, we got DawgNation Express coming up. This is going to be a major, major event for us on Saturday, September 21st. So you can go to DawgNationExpress.com for a whole lot more information about that. Kevin Drummer on the subject of Devontae Wyatt. Yeah, I think Wyatt is a ton of fun, a big part of this defensive line this year, for sure. What else we got on Facebook here? Brian Roche, and I think it's Roche. He's told me this before, and I can't remember. If D-Rob's long ball doesn't have a holding penalty, that's 7 more. Yeah, that was a beautifully executed route right there. D-Rob's a big part of this offense, too. We predicted that last week. We turned out to be right on that. We weren't right on all our predictions. The D-Rob one we nailed, though, because we had just heard some whispers and some rumors that he'd been pretty heavily involved in the offense during practice, and that was proven out there. And that moment is what we all want to see more of from Georgia. Dominate with the run game, be good with the other stuff, but can you add the extra dimension of the deep throw? Well, in that case, Georgia did. and I didn't see the hold. I don't know how legit it was, and you can't obviously erase the penalty because that's part of the game. But that's Georgia trying to do something we all wanted to do, and at least in that moment, that's a pretty good throw and a pretty good run there from and Robertson on that. Bobby Leather says Pickens pancaked a guy. I'd be lying if I told you I didn't notice that. I thought it was very, very funny. Very funny. I definitely saw that. Tony Godog Sickham says Cager is also going to play a real huge part in the passing game. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Saturday, another example kind of that. Coley's familiarity with him probably helps that a little bit when it's all said and done. Al Chandler says Fromm's going to learn about how he throws the ball to Pickens. Yeah, those two guys are going to get on the same page. Pickens he's a prospect, y'all. He's a legit prospect. I mean, the fact that they played him as much as they did in the first game tells you all you need to know there. I know the numbers weren't there, but the fact that he's on the field, that tells you what you need to know. Miles Skedsvold says very encouraged by the style of play, visibly different from Chaney's time. I thought in the early going especially. I mean, in the first half, am I right about this? You had 5 different guys catch the ball. You had, 4 different running backs get carries? Or total of, actually, you had 5 guys get carries, 5 guys get catches, right? And 3 guys had 2. So for those of you who want to see Georgia spreading the ball around more, in the first half of this game, you've definitely got to see that. And I know it's kind of a running joke on our show about me not giving James Cook enough credit, but the Cook performance on Saturday is a perfect example of this Georgia offense being different than it was a year ago. How many 2-back sets did you see? How many moments where Cook is kind of like, and I don't want to make the Auburn comparison because I know people don't like that, but where Cook is almost like the Auburn-style jet sweep guy with the back in the backfield, that's a difficult lineup to stop. So I think you do see the example of what Georgia can do, but Fromm has to be a little bit more efficient now. I mean, you know, he's been 9.5 yards per attempt for virtually the entirety of his career. He was only about, 7.5, if I've got the numbers correct, for this on Saturday. So, I mean, you know, he's got to be a little more efficient. He probably will be. But in terms of working hard and being creative, getting the football there, yeah, I think he's in pretty good shape to be able to do just that. Dante Green also mentioning Kieras Jackson dropped after he caught the ball. He fumbled it. Yeah, and he may have gotten – Connor Riley wrote about this morning at DawgNation.com, and Connor's not with us today. He may have gotten hurt on that play too. We'll have to watch that and kind of see where it goes. Didn't talk a ton about defense today. I also thought Azeez Ojulari was a real bright spot for the defense on Saturday. Probably need to talk more about him. Adrian Hill also mentioning Nolan Smith looking fast and powerful as advertised. Adrian, I'd add to that. He definitely looks the part of being what you thought he was going to be. What's the old Denny Green line about they are who we thought they were? You can put Nolan Smith in that category for sure. For sure. What else? Boy, a lot of Facebook comments coming in. Let me go to YouTube and I'll come back to Facebook in a moment. Jacob Thompson says Connor's still at the Valentine or one of those honky tonks there in downtown Nashville. We had a good time for a DawgNation libation, by the way, on Friday. Saw a lot of you. We kept a lot of that off social media just because, you know, we're gentlemen. But it was fun. It was fun. Spencer Moore says any notable names that didn't make the travel squad. You know, I don't know. I mean, as expected, Robert Beal was not a part of that group. I guess Clay Webb may have been the more notable of the names to kind of be there on that. Kenny McIntosh did travel, which I thought was pretty interesting. If you go look at Mike Griffith's game blog, I guess it is. Yeah, game blog from the game. He's got the full travel roster in there. We should probably put a snap of that on the forum or something too. Yeah, Bubby Dean, by the way. Bubby, one of the well-known commenters here for our show, and pretty active guy on Twitter. Had a chance to see him on Friday. And I got my picture taken with Bubby. I was going to tweet this out and just never had time to. I'll have to show my picture this week of Bubby there. Some of y'all like a chance to see some of the people we saw in person. So I'll have to put my picture of Bubby up. It was good to see him, though. I saw a lot of y'all this weekend. Good to see. Green Soldier says, BA, do you see us throwing it more against Notre Dame? Do you think week 2, week 3 will give us enough time to get everyone on the same page? Yeah, I think it probably, I mean, in terms of getting on the same page, I think these 3 weeks are a pretty good step up for kind of all of that, ramp up to get the competition that matters the most. As far as Georgia throwing it more against Notre Dame, I mean, listen, there is a chance that this season the offense is going to still be very similar to what it has been for the last couple of years for Georgia, an offense that's statistically speaking pretty dominant, but never quite as flashy as some people want it to be. We may just be stuck in that narrative, and we may be, in the college football playoff with a lot of Georgia fans saying, why don't the Dogs, throw the ball more? I mean, we just may be in that narrative here a little bit. Kevin Coates says, are you serious? Harrigan is out. How long? I didn't say that. Light Dog 1968 says, Kevin, are you talking about what I said about Kearis Jackson? That he may have gotten hurt on that catch and hit that resulted in a fumble. He may have gotten a little banged up on that. Kirby didn't offer much of an update on that, but there's at least some speculation that he may have gotten a little banged up on that. That's what I was saying. Nothing on Harrigan. Machine Spike says Mathis and Salyer didn't travel. Yeah, Mathis is not cleared, and Salyer is like legit hurt right now. Double R also reminds us that it's a chance to scout Notre Dame tonight. That's true. Jacob Thompson says Nolan Smith is fast and bendy. The next 3 years with him are going to be awesome for sure. It may only be 2 more years after this one, though. Kelly Burnett says, I was very happy with our defense, but I had the game at 45-6, but a little short there, hoping for a little more explosiveness. Yeah, I understand that, but I think overall, I mean, on the grade of a pass-fail, you got to give Georgia a pass for Saturday, and you got to say it did its job, even if it wasn't quite as I said before, it was total domination and not quite complete annihilation, and so you maybe should be okay with that. I was going to read one here. Light Dog 1968 said, did Nakobe Dean play at all? To my knowledge, Light, I don't believe that Dean got in the game. And y'all can find a still frame that proves me wrong on that because I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure that Dean did not play, and he has been a little banged up as of late, which makes sense. When he is healthy, he will be playing. William Gray, good point. Eli Wolf getting a chance to run as a fullback on Saturday. I like fullbacks, and I like Georgia using Wolf in that role. I didn't mind to see that. Devin Glenn says that Dean did play, so there you go. I didn't personally see him in the game, but Devin says he did play. Sean Glancy on Herring not being involved in the game very much. I can't really comment one way or another on that because I don't know, but I do know that Kirby was asked about Herring not being in the game, and he didn't offer much. On that. Enrique Murillo says, I approved the I formation. Yeah, I love I formation. I love that. Jarvis Hanna says Trayvon Walker looked amazing. Yeah, y'all, you got to do this, especially for those of y'all who are going to the game on Saturday. Y'all have got to watch Trayvon Walker cover kickoffs. Now, I know he did some big things on defense, too, and he may be one of these guys that may ends up playing a lot more this year than I thought he might as a freshman on the defensive line. But do yourself a favor for the sheer entertainment. Watch that guy cover kickoffs. It would not surprise me if the SEC outlaws 290 pounds who run as well as he does from being on kick coverage teams in the future because it just, if nothing else, for just the safety of the players. He is a gigantic missile on this kick coverage. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. So as much as he's doing on defense, him being a part of your kick coverage unit is ridiculous. It's really something. If you're going to the game, this is kind of hard to see on TV, but if you're going to the game, watch Big 44 on that kick coverage. That's really fun to be able to see. Light Dog says Kirby's going to need a new visor. Yeah, boy, he got into Channing Tindall and grabbing that visor the entire time. Jeff Hensley says love the 2-back sets. Like those there as well. Frank DiCarlo says about the defensive backs. Played an amazing game. Yeah, that's a pretty deep group, I think. Pretty deep group. What else we got over here in Facebook? Damian Street says Nolan Smith looked good. Trayvon Walker, yeah, boy, both those guys, Damian, are big-time prospects. You're right. Easy Brown shouting out Channing Tindall. He gets in on a sack. At first, I kind of shortchanged Channing on this. On the postgame show Saturday night, I wanted to give the full sack to Azeez Ojulari. I have since seen the video, and I need to apologize to Channing Tindall. He got a worthy half sack on that. I tried to give the whole thing to Azeez. To my eyes, in real time, it looked like it was Azeez's sack, and somebody else got in there late. But Channing, for the most part, met him at the quarterback, so you got to give him both sacks for that. You do. John Shaw said, what did Tindall do to get ripped by Kirby? I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure it probably had something to do with where he was lined up, if I had to guess. I don't 100% know, though. Lee Bridges said, we just sat with Wolf's family. It was great to see them supporting him and DawgNation. Yeah, Lee, that's a cool thing. I'm glad you told that story. That's really good. David West says, we almost blocked that field goal by Vanderbilt. It was really funny. Jordan Davis got in there on that. It kind of reminded me, for those of you who've been watching college football for a little while, you remember when Terrence Cody blocked that punt, or was it a field goal? He blocked a kick for Alabama against Tennessee. I guess it would have been a field goal, yeah, because Tennessee was trying to kick the ball to win the game. Cody got the block to preserve the Alabama victory. And seeing Jordan Davis bust through the middle there kind of reminded me of Mal Cody for Alabama a couple of years ago. But Davis, who did get a hand on it, ball deflects, and it goes over the upright anyway. And Davis, when he does the hands up thing, because you got a block field goal, then you turn around only to see the ball kind of just duck hook its way across the uprights. He kind of just like put his head down there like that. It was actually kind of funny because if you're a big guy like that, you work hard to get a block field goal, and then you get one, and then you deflect it over the uprights. It's kind of a funny reaction to him for that. Philip Jordan Wells and the Jeremy Pruitt thing. Yeah, listen, I think that Pruitt's reputation took a bad hit from this, because it's one thing to lose, and the comparison that's going to get made is, well, what about Nick Saban? He lost to Louisiana Road in 2007. Here's the difference between Saban and Alabama in 2007. He was the coach of the Miami Dolphins before taking the Alabama job. He had won a national championship at LSU as recently as 2003. Saban was a proven commodity. A bad game and a bad season of 2007 didn't tarnish his reputation because of what he had done prior to that. We don't know if Jeremy Pruitt can coach at all. We don't. He was getting Saban coffee as recently as 2 years ago. This is not a guy that has the same kind of reputation. Losing to Georgia State might just be who he is. And there's an element of this that is admittedly probably unfair. If you want to go back and look at the way that Georgia played against Nicholls in 2016, Georgia in 2016 against Nicholls did not play much better than Tennessee probably played on Saturday against Georgia State, but Georgia snuck out of there with a win, which preserved everything that Kirby Smart was later on able to build. Had Georgia stubbed its toe and lost to Nicholls, that loss could have potentially been just as damaging to Kirby then as the state loss for Tennessee was on Saturday. For those of you that like the sort of what-if scenarios for Georgia football, one of the all-time what-ifs might be, what if Georgia lost to the Colonels that day? Is it Colonels? Is that what Nicholls is? If they lost that game there that day, things could have been very different for Kirby Smart after that. It could have been what Jeremy Pruitt's about to go through. So Pruitt will still be the coach at Tennessee next year, but his career as Vols coach, I believe, is essentially over. He'll never have the support that he needs. This will simply be a waiting game to eventually get the program to be what it wants to be. The problem, as I said during the regular show, he doesn't have an ally. He has a careerist as an athletic director. He has a local media looking for revenge, and he's got boosters who are just getting tired of waiting. And if you're Pruitt, you don't have a lot of friends right now, and that's going to be a problem. Maurice Carter says the Tindall moment was about a block in the back penalty. That's good to know. I didn't quite see that. Philip Jordan Wells says the replay is on now. Thanks for that. Jennifer Wheat Rucker, good point. How about Eli Wolf being here as opposed to Rocky Flop? Yeah, no doubt. Add Cade Mays into that too, for sure. And, one can't help but wonder what a Rick Gilbert may have thought of all of that. Our buddy Michael Carvel, one of our producers, is always happy about that. He wants to see Gilbert here at Georgia. Tim Harrell says also the difference between Kirby against Nicholls and Pruitt against Georgia State was this is Pruitt's second year, and that's probably true. What else we got here? Philip Jordan Wells on Cook as a kick returner. I thought Cook had a really good day Saturday, but Kirby did have kind of a funny line on him bringing the ball out of the end zone that one time. he would rather him not do that from so deep. I know he kind of dropped that one kickoff too, but y'all, James Cook is a weapon now. He is a legit weapon for this team. And it was good to see them using him as much as they did. Richard Sheffield says, for about Tennessee's woes, it's a good thing that Pruitt handles pressure so well and is mild-mannered. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Kevin Drummer says, mark my words, Hugh Freeze is coaching at Tennessee next year. Did y'all see Hugh Freeze on Saturday? I'm sure you did. Coaching from that hospital bed. What a doofus-looking thing that was. What a weird-looking thing. BJY says, why did Hurts leave Alabama to do the same thing at Oklahoma? You know, I thought the Hurts performance last night was not as perfect as some people thought it was. I saw him. I know he's got open receivers all over the place, but y'all, the clock management in the first half, he got saved by somebody else calling a timeout. Otherwise, they run out of time there, don't get a chance to score. I also saw him misfiring a couple of deep throws against a better defense if Oklahoma ever plays against one. I think that's a little different for him. Now, there's been a lot of talk that Hurts wants to actually have a chance to play against Alabama. He wants that badly. Maybe he gets that chance. Oklahoma defense is obviously terrible. I didn't think the Hurts performance last night, despite the stats, I didn't think it was what everybody else kind of thought it was. Oh, Joel, thanks for the kind words, but the YouTube interviews, that they were kind of in the right state of mind. Yeah, I love that moment with them post-game. Georgia does a pretty good job of, bringing a bunch of guys out there, and for the most part, they're a little more unguarded after having just played a game than they would be in a regular media situation during the week. Yeah, I don't care about that kind of media stuff. I do realize that, but the post-game interviews are really fun. From a selfish standpoint, I'm always a little bit frustrated that I don't get to do those for the home games. I have other responsibilities, other obligations, but for the away games, I get to do them, and I always really enjoy that. Really enjoy that. But thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. What else we got going on here? Al Chandler, I agree with you. Urban Meyer's going to coach one of these teams sometime soon. Wyatt Fielden says, BA, how happy were you when Robertson got his first receiving touchdown, and how happy were you when James Coley used Robertson? Yeah, I was very happy about that, because Robertson, because of his speed, that's a guy that this Georgia team's got to use here this year. And so for those of you who want to say, you'd like to see a sharper day from Fromm, or you'd like to see a little more consistent offense through the full 60 minutes, totally get that. But the one thing I think you do have to be pretty happy with is they were creative with how they used Cook. They were creative with how they used Robertson. They didn't connect with Pickens, but they were certainly creative with how they used him. So if you're, putting Eli Wolf as a fullback as an example of a little bit of a creative wrinkle we didn't see a year ago from this Georgia offense. So on an imperfect day, you saw some wrinkles. If you want to see some different stuff, you kind of saw it there. You did, for sure. Richard Pollard, thanks for the kind words as well. Appreciate that. Good to have a chance to talk to DeAndre Swift after the game. Over here on YouTube for a little bit, then after that, we're going to get ready to get off the air. Enrique Murillo on that big catch for D-Rob. Yeah, listen, if that one connects, that changes everything that you see there for sure. Will talking about Jaden Hazelwood making his debut for Oklahoma. Yeah, he's a good player. I mean, I'm thrilled with how it worked out for Georgia, with Georgia getting Pickens. If you get Hazelwood, you probably don't get Pickens, of course. So I'm thrilled with how it worked out. But, I mean, I wanted Hazelwood for a reason. I'm not going to, badmouth him just because he chose Oklahoma. That's a good player, and I wouldn't have minded seeing him at Georgia for sure. Eric Smith says, how happy are you now that we didn't get Derek Ansley as a coach? Yeah, boy, a lot of money spent by Tennessee that looks pretty foolish right now, or at least not great, with Ansley on the defense, Chaney on the offense. That was a team that did not seem to be all that well prepared for what Georgia State was bringing to the table on Saturday. That is probably true. Devin Glenn on Azeez and Tindall getting a sack. Yeah, Azeez Ojulari, in addition to the sack, had, 6 tackles, I believe? Good day for him. Memphis Dog on the subject of Tyler Simmons. Simmons is going to be on the field, and I think he's also solidified that punt returner job. I really like Simmons as a punt returner. Really like him there a lot. Let's see if we can get a few more kind of quick topics here, and then we'll get off the air. A lot of folks still reacting to what happened for Tennessee on Saturday. That is that's the big story from college football over the weekend, I believe. Elite GB talking about the Nod and some of the guys. Boy, a lot of comments flying in here, too. So y'all help me with this. So Nada gets cut from the 53-man roster, but does make the Lions practice squad roster. Natrez Patrick makes the Rams. Holyfield initially made the Panthers 53-man roster, which I was thrilled about, only to then be cut from the Panthers after they decided to pick up 3 players off of waivers, which happens a lot around the NFL, but, I don't pay attention to the final roster movements for all that many NFL teams typically, but when it comes to Holyfield, I was paying attention. So that was devastating news for him after it looked like he'd made that team. Godwin got cut by the Panthers. Who else am I leaving out that probably matters there? If y'all know more about that kind of stuff, y'all can pop that in there. You can pop that in there. What else we got here? Nakia Copeland says Nolan Smith's a monster. Yeah, listen, Nolan's a big timer. Big timer. I really do. Gary McConnell, though, on Aziz, he's a big timer as well. This outside linebacking core looks pretty good to me right now. Pretty good. Boy, a lot of Tennessee talk over here on the Facebook side of things as well. I mean, I expect Tennessee to play better against BYU on Saturday, but that won't excuse just the absolute ugly, awful loss. Ugly, awful loss that occurred against Georgia State. Hugh Nash says, "B.A. great seeing you." Yeah, I got a chance to see Hugh on Saturday. So I had a chance to meet a lot of y'all this weekend that we talk about or talk to in the comment section every day, and it's always so much fun. There was a crazy moment with the dog walk, too. I saw Hugh around the dog walk time. So you can go back and watch our broadcast. We were on the air for like 45, 50 minutes, which I do long shows all the time by myself, but it's a little more challenging in the heat of a day like that in Nashville with all these people around you, just kind of packed in there tight. I mean, you wouldn't believe how close the quarters are. Try to do this show, and you're waiting. Well, come to find out, and Kirby told the story after the game, and Brian Harrion talked about this too. You can go see both these stories on the DawgNation YouTube page. So there was a little bit of an issue with the police escort, and then the lead officer had to pull off. The next officer is now in charge, and things got confusing after that, and Georgia couldn't make it to the spot it was supposed to enter the stadium from, and all the folks lined up for the dog walk were just very disappointed, and the players themselves, I'm sure, were disappointed too. They like to walk through that crowd, and there were a couple thousand folks gathered for the dog walk. It was huge crowd for all of that. But they couldn't get there because of a traffic thing or whatever. It was really, really weird. Very, very strange. But once the game all kind of works out the way it does, you can kind of laugh about it. But I don't know that anyone was laughing about it at the time. Vanderbilt's just a very strange stadium to go to. A very strange stadium. Miriam Martin Corbin says that he was tough this weekend. Yeah, Miriam, I'd love to have seen you. Lee Bridges says try to meet up Saturday night, but y'all some busy people. Maybe next time. Yeah, we've been running around a bunch lately. Jarvis Hanna on the subject of Jacob Eason. Nice debut for him for Washington. I expect that Eason will have a really good year. Eason's issue is that he is not as accurate a thrower as Fromm is, but in a league like the Pac-12 where the receivers may just be more open, less than pinpoint accuracy may not be too much of a problem there. Philip Jordan Wells says that first drive for Georgia was pretty creative. I thought it was probably too. Maurice Carter says better days will come this season once Fromm is clicking with his wide receiver core. He'll be in contention for winning it all. Yeah, I think that group's going to get into a little bit better rhythm as the season goes along. I think you're probably right about that. Al Chandler says the cameraman had some issues on Saturday. I didn't see the TV broadcast yet, so I'll have to take your word for that, but I'm sure I'll be checking that out at some point this week. Denithian Henderson asking about Davin Bellamy. Yeah, what is the latest on Bellamy? Is he still on the Texans roster? What is the latest on that? Lee Bridges also brings a pretty good point. Lots of number changes. I mean, a lot of number changes. Pickens went from 83 back to 1. Devod Wilson's now wearing number 1. That's like, by my count, the third number he's had at Georgia before it's all said and done, since he's been there. Before it's all said and done, he may be like a Tommy Two-Tone song, 8675309. We're kind of heading towards that kind of career for Devod Wilson, where he changes his number a couple times a year, I guess. But he's now wearing number 1. Lewis Seen is now wearing number 8. Is that right? Of course, Adam Anderson was 56 last year's 19 now. There are a lot of number changes. For sure. So that is not super easy to keep up with. Gary McConnell says, where do we look for tickets to the tailgate for Notre Dame? Great question, Gary. DawgNationExpress.com. Go to DawgNationExpress.com. You can find out more details about that. And, Gary, I'd love to have you there for sure. Love to have you there as a part of that. So, Gary, can't wait to see you for Dog Nation Express. Ken Feinberg says that Vanderbilt may be the second-best team in the SEC East. I will say, I don't believe Vandy loses to Georgia State this past Saturday where they to play. I don't even think Vanderbilt would have gone on the road and lost to Wyoming. I don't think that Vanderbilt, they would at least have had a chance to beat North Carolina. So this is not an awful Vanderbilt team. This is a team that I believe qualifies for a bowl. They're going to beat plenty of teams. I think there's a very good chance that's true. Very good chance that's true. Jonathan Searcy says Devard got an earful from Kirby. I didn't see that. That's kind of funny. I didn't see that. All right, we're going to get ready to get off the air here. So huge thanks to all of you for making all of this possible. We appreciate everything that you do for us. And I'll remind you that we got more coverage coming up today. Kirby Smart's press conference coming up. Also, make sure you check out the AJC for all your Atlanta News Now. Atlanta News Now at AJC.com. Make sure you check that out. Labor Day events, some of the weather stuff coming off the weekend, whatever happened with Hurricane Dorian. You can kind of get up to date on all of that. You want to be in the know for your water cooler conversation. AJC.com is the place to go to get your Atlanta news. Now, also huge thanks to R.S. Andrews for bringing the R.S. Andrews cool down to you. You know, a lot of times it was like 90 degrees in Nashville on Saturday. We got a hot September coming up. That heat of the early fall is just as intense as the summer, and you want to make sure that air conditioning continues to work. That's why you want to get that $99 Smiley tune-up from my friends at R.S. Andrews to make sure that's indeed the case. They will get your system back to factory fresh specs, and it's just $99. R.S. Andrews has been delivering smiles for a long time, story after story. They deliver smiles, and they can deliver a smile for you, but you've got to check them out online at rsandrews.com. All right, we will see you back here tomorrow, 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily, and, of course, after that for our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Y'all have a great day. Happy Labor Day, and we'll look forward to seeing you then.